Hey guys, I hope you're doing good. Today I'm going to be showing you how I made this animation in Houdini using a bullet solver. Before we start, if you want to grab the scene file for this, you can do so on my Gumroad for a couple bucks. Alright, so let's get started with a geo node, of course, and then I'm going to bring in the geometry I want to scatter. In my case, it's going to be a rock that I grabbed from Megascans. And I'm taking the high poly version. We're going to reduce it down to make a proxy for the simulation. And then at the end, we're going to put the high poly back onto our simulated points. Okay, so as you can see, it's massive, so we're going to need to match size it down. Let's make it 2 centimeters and scale to fit. Also, I want to remove some attributes I don't need. I just want to keep position, normal, UV, and that's it. Alright. So this is going to be our high poly geo. Let's create a null for it. Whoops. Okay, and now we need a low poly version for the sim. So let's do a poly reduce. Alright, so we currently have about 1 million faces, which is way too much. Let's go 0.01 on the percent to keep. There we go. We now have 100 faces, 50 points. And I think this is about as low as we can go while keeping the general shape of the rock. Cool, so this is going to be our out low. And there we go. Okay, cool, so we have our geo ready. Now we need to prepare the points to scatter onto. So let's add a box. And I used, let's preview it. I used these dimensions for my sim. Then I want to scatter points inside that volume. So first turn it into a volume with ISO offset, crank this up, and then scatter. Here we go. I went with 10,000 points. Okay, so now we can do a copy to points. Just like so. And it's working, but we have the same orientation for every rock, which we don't want. So let's use a MOPS randomize node. There we go. And just take on randomize orientation. And boom. Okay, so now, if we just pipe this into a RBD sim, it's going to explode because we have a bunch of intersecting geometry, which we don't want. So one way to de-intersect geometry I'm going to show you. There's a bunch of ways in Houdini, but when you don't have like spherical geometry, it's a bit trickier. One way I've found is to use a Boolean. Wait for it to load here. Just going to cancel and change the operation to detect. That's it. And then output A by A polygons. And if we blast everything but that, select it here, delete non-selected. So these are going to be all the polygons that intersect with other polygons. Now we can use this to find the nearest point in our point cloud here. Based on this intersecting geo, so find the nearest point and then delete it, and then we do another copy to points, and ideally that should get rid of all the intersecting geo. Alright, so let's do a proximity SOP, like so, and so this is going to output or highlight every point that's close to this mesh. So we can turn on the search radius by a lot, actually. And that looks better. Now we want to make sure to output a group called nearby, in which we can blast. Okay, so if we compare these like points to these, you can see we did remove a bunch of them, which is what we want. And then let's do another copy to points with these points. And there we go. if we compare it to before, you can see it did remove some geometry, but not too much. I think this is fine. We can play with the search radius here, maybe make it a bit smaller. And I think that's too much, but to make sure, if you want to be sure, you can just copy these nodes here and run the same operation again. And if we still get geometry here, it means we still have intersections. So let's move that up again. And there we go. We now have no geometry here, which means there are no intersections in our scattered geo here. Cool, so now it's ready for the bullet sim. But before that, we're going to need a collider. Because if we just sim this, the rocks are going to fall down and that's it. So we can use this box again. Let's go to side view, front view here. And you can see, actually, let's look at this box and then preview our geo here. You can see that because we scattered rocks on the points, it goes outside of the bounds of our box, which means we need to do a little peek. And just move that up until we don't get intersections anymore. Cool. So now I want to remove the top of this box because we don't need it. Just select the prim here. All right. And now I want to add some thickness to this because we do need geometry with thickness to act as a collider in simulations. Let's do a poly extrude. There we go. Move that up a bit. And make sure we output the back. Okay, and that's our collider ready. Let's put a null here. Cool, and also before we start with the simulation, you can see that this is about 1 meter across, and I just want to scale that up because I found that with RBD sims, when you really scale up your entire scene, you get faster and more accurate, or rather it's cheaper, it's faster to get simulations that are as accurate. So yeah, it's just much less of a hassle to work on. So let's do a transform. I'm gonna color it red just so we remember it, and scale everything up by 5 on our scatter geo. I'll need to do the same thing here for our collider. Cool. So now we can add a bullet solver right here. Plug that in. Plug that in. Okay. For substeps, I don't need this many. I found that 5 was enough for this sim. I do want to check. Wait for it to load here. I do want to check our collision, how it's looking. Always a bit slow. Okay, and if we press W, we can see our blue collision geo here doesn't quite line up with our mesh. So let's go to properties and turn this padding down to 0.002. And there we go. Now it lines up a lot better with our mesh. And let's check the collisions for the... Actually, does it? Yeah, it looks good. Let's check our box here. Go to right here, show collision shape on the collision geo. Wait for that to load. It's always long for some reason. We have an issue because right now it is a convex hole. We need to change it to convex, to concave, sorry. And nice, there we go. Just double check. Yeah, it lines up perfectly. Cool, ready to sim. I'm just going to turn off the visualization because it just lags a ton. All right, I'm also going to turn off our collision geo. And let's sim like 30-ish frames of this. Okay, beautiful. So the rocks drop down and they settle, which is exactly what we want. We now have a nice base to do our second sim on. The reason I did it this way with 2 separate sims, this first one here to just get the rocks to like settle on the floor, and then a second one to have the actual swirling movements, is because I found that it's more practical for me because if you do it all in one sim, you have to wait. You have to like sim for like 30-ish frames until the rocks settle, and then you can start your movements, which is annoying because when you're like tweaking the sim and trying to find the right settings for the noise, the movement and everything, it means every time you have to wait 30 frames before it actually starts simming, and just very annoying. So I like to do one pass here just to get the rocks to settle in a realistic way, right, with the collisions and everything. And then you animate, or you do your sim with the forces on top of that. All right, cool. So now we're gonna have to redo this because for the output attributes, I just want ID. That's it. So that's actually, oh, it keeps it. Cool. I don't need to resim. Excellent. So now what I want to do is grab one frame out of this simulation. I'm going to go frame 25, then drop a time shift. And if I do control shift left click right here, it removes the expression that was in there. And so now we're always at frame 25 no matter what. So next, what I want to do to prepare for the second sim is remove the points in the shape of a smiley face, as you saw in the intro. So for the smiley face, I'm just going to copy what I did from my other file, because, I mean, it's not really important, right? Just gives me this. This video isn't about this part. You're going to put whatever geo you want as a collider. And if we preview our sim, you can see it's nice in the center. Looks good to me. So let's add a group node. Second input, we're going to want our smiley face. And then we can do a keep in bounding regions. Make sure it's set to points for the group and select bounding object. We now have a group of every point which is within that smiley face, which we can just blast away. And what the hell? Aha, I forgot something very important. In our second copy points here, we want to make sure that we pack and instance. Because for RBD sims, it's always better to have packed geometry. In fact, I thought that you had to have packed geometry, but I guess not. Alright, let's rerun the sim till frame 25. There we go. And now when I blast away points, it gets rid of the entire rock and not just part of it. Cool. Oh, and by the way, the reason we need the ID attribute here is because we're going to be doing some retiming later, which uses the ID attribute. Alright, cool. So now this is ready for our second bullet sim. Just real quick, what I want to do is prepare the collider for the second one. We're going to want our box and our smiley face, so it's just merge those together, and there we go. Let's copy this over here, change the inputs, and whoops, for this one we're going to want 10 substeps in order to be able to slow down our sim times 10, right? So to set up the forces to have the vortex effect, let's dive in here and add a pop axis force, which is going to be the main swirling effect. I'm going to copy the settings I found from my previous sim, which were for the shape, let's make it really big. And then 5 and 2 here. We do have a little bit of suction as well, just so the rocks don't go flying outwards and like get pushed to the edges of our box. So that's it for the axis force. We also have a pop wind, just to have some random noise in there. Let's change the amplitude to 2.5. Swirl scale was 0.5. Length was way down, about there. And roughness up. Okay, and finally, actually let me show you what happens if we sim this for a bit. So as you can see, we've got the movement we want, but what I don't like is that some rocks go flying up like way far. So I'm sure you could just tweak the forces until you get something that's not as crazy. But one like kind of hack to get around that is by adding a geowrangle in here. And if we do v at target v dot y equals 0. So this is going to force the velocity on the y-axis to be 0, and so we don't get as much upward movement. Or in fact, not at all, I think, should be. And if we look here, you can see, actually still do get a little bit, but really not as much, which is great. All right, let's sim this for real. I'm going to cache it, make sure we have 10 substeps, and I'm going to do 25 frames. Okay, and the sim's done. Took about 5 minutes. Let's have a look at it. Okay, pretty nice. We've got the movement we want. As you can see, it's swirling nicely. We've got just a little bit of movement in the middle, and the points aren't like being ejected outwards too much. So first thing to fix, you can see that some rocks do find their way inside the smiley face here. So instead of like tweaking the sim and everything, I'm just going to do a like very basic solution, which is going to be copying our 2 nodes here, paste them here, and boom. We just, when any point gets inside of that geo, we blast it, which isn't the best solution because it does mean you have some points that disappear, like this one right here. But it was good enough for my case. Okay, so what we want to do next is going to be slowing down this whole sim. Let's do a retime. Change the speed to 0.1. Output frame range, well, input frame range is going to be 25. And output is going to be 250, if my math is correct. Let's have a look. Very nice. Everything works. Okay, cool. Next thing I want to do is remove the first 50 frames. Because when it starts, you can see it's very like squarish and all the points are nice and flat. And then as it goes, then we get more kind of noise in the sim, which means that, you know, if you start here, you can see that it starts clean, and then you get some nice randomness. So yeah, I just want to get rid of the beginning with a time shift. And let's do $F plus 49. And now we start frame 50. Beautiful. Okay, so now I've got this, but it's very slow and very linear. So what I want to do is use a ramp for the time. So let's retime it. Let's do by frame. And I'm just going to copy the settings I had, which is frame 1. Let's remove this expression and add a keyframe. Frame 25. Let's go 50 here. Frame 25 is going to be frame 96. And then frame 50 is going to be frame 192. Let's see if that works. It does not. Okay. What did I miss? Ooh, I believe it's because I need this to be 250. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so wait. Yeah, okay. If my input frame range is 250, like from 1 to 250, but this right here, the global animation end frame, isn't as big as 250, then it won't work. So that's why it didn't work. Okay, now I just want to... Actually, let's have a look at how it looks now. Do a quick little flip book. Okay, so doesn't look good. What I want is for it to start really fast and then slow down in the middle and then accelerate again at the end. One, because it just looks cool, and two, because that's going to allow us to do a nice little transition when we have the two shots, as you saw in the intro. So I'm going to tweak my keyframes here. Let's grab this one and put it all the way up, and do the same thing for this one. All right, and then for this one, oops, I'm going to press R to keep the acceleration ratio so both handles move at the same time. Let's do something like this. Okay, let's have a look at this. There we go. That's what we want. So it starts fast, slows down, and then accelerates again at the end. Cool. So now we're done with the sim, but we still have our low poly proxy on it. So how do we get our high poly back onto it? One way I found is something I found a while ago on Reddit, I think, or some forum. So shout out to the person who showed me this trick. What we're going to do is add, delete geometry to keep the points. We only want the points. And then we do an attribute wrangle. And in here we do for@transform. So create a matrix equals for@rest transform. Okay. And then @p equals 0. Whoops. There we go. So this puts all our points in the center because we said @p equals 0. And now we delete, do an attribute delete. And that's not it. And delete the transform attribute. And then we do a copy to points. And here we want our high poly geo. Let's bring it down. It crashed. Okay, we're back. So we do the add, then we do the geo wrangle, then we delete the transform attribute, and then copy the points with the high poly input here, which obviously is going to be a ton of polygons. So make sure to pack an instance. And then, so we've got our scattered geo. Let me change this to have more polys. Okay, that didn't do much. Let's do 300. All right, whatever. So we've got our high poly scattered, but it's not moving. And so to copy the movement, we need a transform pieces. Second input is going to be our points here. All right. And boom, just like that. And if we template our low poly version, you can see that it matches. Cool. So the next thing I did is just added a random color per piece to use in shading. And then, of course, invert that scale up operation we did at the beginning. And that's it. Now my scene is very laggy because I've got a ton of geometry. But yeah, let's go over the shading real quick. So I'm just using the maps from Megascans for everything, except for the diffuse, where I brought in my CD, did a bit of a ramp, give it a slightly like beige to white colors, and then did a color composite with multiply, just to add some randomness, but you don't really need to do this. All right, so the first light is an HDRI, which acts as a fill. You can see it's set pretty low, just to kind of fill in the shadows so we don't have too much contrast. And then I've got this light coming in from the top right, which is kind of my key. And already I think this looks pretty good in terms of lighting. And then I've got a third light, which is located right under the smiley face, coming up through the floor. Just to give a nice rim light on the edges here. Alright, and that's it for the tutorial. I hope it was helpful, hope you learned something. If you have any questions, drop a comment and I'll do my best to answer it. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Bye.